if you ever forgot. So, okay, let's pray. So, Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity that we have to come before you as your children, your servants. And we just thank you so much for all that you continue to provide and sustain us and our needs that we have that are so many. We thank you that you never get tired of hearing from us, and as we constantly petition you to help, assist, guide, refresh, renew us. And our physical health, our health of our soul, our life, and more importantly, our spirit, Father. We know that we are just spiritual beings passing through a physical world and not the other way around. And so we ask to continue our mindfulness of, yes, we have needs of the physical. And yes, we thank you for what you've provided. Let us be grateful for what we have and not think of what we don't have. Thank you for all the provisions you make in the financial areas and emotional stabilities and mental frame of mind, that you help us to stay on course, to help us to get a better opportunity to grow in spirit by letting us know that you are constantly taking care of us as your eyes on the sparrow. You count the numbers on our head, on the hairs on our head. Father, we thank you so much for all the diligent care you have for each and every one of us. Be with us to the needs that we have that are spoken, unspoken, and the continual situations for Robin, her grandson, and the surgery he had, and the situations with ongoing illness and sickness, and with my father and other family members and other peoples that have extended family as well with those things. And we know that you're a caring and loving and giving Father, and we ask that you continue to be that good shepherd to bring about the care and need that is needful. Help us now in this time of study to look for you, see you in your words, and what you are intending to us to understand, to apply, and to hear your voice, your words, your truth. May you be our pastor, our counselor, our teacher, our shepherd, our coming bridegroom, and our everything in this time. Rather, we ask all these things that we pray, and in your name, Jesus, Yeshua's name, we pray. Amen. All right, so today's lesson, don't forget again, I'll repeat if you didn't hear me, is that the communion is today after our lesson. And it's on the Olivet Discourse, our lesson today. It's lesson number 4. And it's going to be continuously, believe it or not, just on the first couple of verses. As we continue to plod through this slowly, it's important to set the tone, as we did already, on the aspect of who's writing and who. We talked about that. I erased the other parts of the board except for the precursors of reminding us of Matthew, Mark, and Luke are the 3 gospel writers who wrote of the Olivet Discourse. John did not, interesting enough, but then again, John had his little specific uniqueness. Don't think he's out to lunch on, oh my gosh, why did John leave out the most prophetically unbelievable teaching of Christ? Well, remember, he's also the one who took half of his gospel to write about the last week of Jesus and the events thereafter. The other ones didn't spend that much time. Think about that. From John 13 to John, all the way to the rest of the book, he talks about that. So it's interesting that John does that. John also talks about Jesus as being God emphatically. He has the most amount of I ams in John. So I want to make sure that we're not making John out to be somebody who's just kind of out on the skirts of, hey, where's he at with the prophetic discourse? No. It's because John was so beloved of Christ. My take on that is it wasn't meant for him to speak on that. He already had his own take on Revelation yet to come, where God was going to reveal that to him. So this is like for the Matthew of the 12 apostles, like God gave that to Matthew to write this out. And of course, Mark and Luke added some flavor as well. Don't forget also that John also writes specifically about some other aspects at the beginning of things regarding the divinity of Christ. Again, in the beginning of his book, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was, it says a God, but means the emphatic only God there ever was. It's a Greek anarthros to emphasize he's the only one that ever is, was, and ever will be. He's that same God who became flesh. So that's what John talks about. Remember, John's the only one also that depicts Jesus' baptism occurring, if you do the frame of time, in Purim. He's the only one also that talks about Christ fulfilling his birth on Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, through his wording of the word dwell in John 1:14. So John's got some uniqueness of his divinity and of his fulfillment of different feast days that other gospel writers didn't talk about, but he did. But let's talk about, back to our text about Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Remember, Matthew is the person who, again, is writing from the Hebrew mindset, Mark to the Roman mindset, or you could say Jewish and Gentile, and then Luke to the common man. So remember, Luke's a doctor, a physician. Right? Most physicians will tell you they don't really care about your ethnicity and all the other different things before they first and foremost care about you being a human. If you weren't a human, you'd be a veterinarian, right? So the physician sees the humanity of somebody first. Then they see the gender second. And so therefore, Luke's talking about the humanity of the common man, which is why in Luke he does not specify who asked the questions to Jesus. He says they. That's it. Mark tells you specifically it's Peter, Andrew, John, and James. Matthew tells you it's oi disciples who talk about the stones being overthrown, and then later on there's those disciples, when you mean oi, meaning those there, of the many disciples that followed him. There's the 12 apostles, Matthew 24:1. But then there's 24 verse 3 when they ask him again. It's of those 12, there's oi disciples, there's those other ones of the 12, which he doesn't tell you who they are, but he makes a distinction of the 12. There's some that ask the question of when these questions about when will these things be. And so we know by putting things together, this is not a multitude of events, the Olivet Discourse. Again, I want to make sure we're prefacing this. These Gospels are called synoptic Gospels. Synoptic is a seminary term that they use, it's a grammar term, but it's a seminary verbiage that's used to depict that they claim that Matthew, Mark, and Luke tell the same story, different perspectives. That's true in some of the stories, not in all of the stories, and that's where seminaries turn into being cemeteries, because they get dead in their spirit and don't want to hear from God's word. They just get caught up in the dogmas of what tradition says, and then they just don't see outside that box. And like, you need to stop doing that, man. Tradition's supposed to, when it's good, it comes from God. Remember, Paul said that. Paul said the traditions handed down to me from Christ, I hand down to you in 2 Thessalonians. That's a good tradition when it comes from God. You go, traditions are all bad. No, so wait. Don't you remember the feast days? What's that? Tradition. Who instituted those? God. Traditions aren't bad if they come from God. Okay, they come from the Lord God Almighty, Yeshua, Yahweh Elohim. They're good. Traditions are good when they come from God. When they come from man, depends. A lot of times they're bad. So when it references this aspect of synoptic, it's a tradition phrasing. So as soon as a person's in churchianity or students of the Bible, they make this mistake of thinking, oh, it's the same story told differently. And then when they do that, they do one of two things. One, they've missed the fact that, like in the parable of the sower and the seed, they're all three different in Matthew and Mark and Luke. They're not the same story. They're all told about different things. They're all a different seed, a different enemy, a different outcome. And yet people say, oh, same thing. No, it's not. Stop with the rhetoric. But in this case, they are the same story, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, which becomes up the second problem you have with the synoptic thinking. You think, well, the only problem with synoptic thinking is that you miss the fact that there could be different stories in total and not different variations of the same story. That's one mistake synoptic doctrine will make into your brain. The second mistake that the synoptic doctrinal mindset will make to you is you gloss over details. And you tend to think it doesn't really matter because tomato, they're both the fruit, which I remember before telling you I had a hard time knowing that as a kid. I thought tomato was a vegetable, but whatever. So the reality is it's just interesting how we sit there and have this confrontation in our minds because of what we don't realize is what's been sown to us by our mom and dad, by our pastors and preachers, teachers, seminaries, denominations, you name it, right? The books and tapes and the videos and the movies that we watch and all this kind of stuff, the books we read, they all put forth. And I was a part of a conference recently where another, for example, idiom, I'll bring up one little idiom of this, it meaning a frame of thought. People say things like, oh, you're a kingdom person. What? You're furthering the kingdom. How am I doing that? And that gets confusing because you get into Matthew, Mark, and Luke about the Olivet Discourse, and if that's your mindset, how are you going to hear the things that are written when Jesus says, kingdom will rise up against kingdom? What are you saying? The kingdom in me of God Almighty will rise up against those that are anti-Christian? Oh my gosh, that's not what he's talking about. But yet they'll say this because that's what they think. And then Jesus, they get that from Jesus who said, the kingdom's in your midst, meaning he's the king, he's in your midst. But they think he meant the kingdom's within you. What? No. And to make this real simple, go back, don't believe me. Go back and read the Lord's Prayer. Please, by all means, read it. Read the Lord's Prayer. And Jesus says, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Does he say that we collaborate with that process? Nope. Did we ask for that to happen? Nope. He said that. So the kingdom is in heaven and it's coming to earth. How are you furthering that? I don't understand. Jesus told Pontius Pilate, the kingdom were of this world, my soldiers would fight for me. He told you clearly it's not of this world. But yet in churchianity, it is of this world. So who am I supposed to believe? The pastor or Jesus? I'm going to go with Jesus. I mean, come on. Who am I supposed to believe? The common churchianity mindset of what a kingdom means? Or the fact that the kingdom is a physical restoration, as I mentioned in the book of Acts? When will you restore the kingdom to Israel? They asked that question. The apostles even understood it. So it's amazingly crazy. It's one example of how if you don't understand things correctly, you're going to go into the OLIVET Discourse seeing things incorrectly. Common sense issue, right? It's the old, again, I mentioned before, the construction terminology, you measure twice, cut once, right? So you have to make sure you understand the context and you understand the responsibility that you have to the details. And if you just don't want to do that, then that's fine. Then this study, you're going to hate it. You're going to hate this study. If you hate context and hate details, you're going to hate this study. And that's just the way Jesus talked all along. So on Friday, to go into our continual study of the book of Matthew and Mark and Luke and all of the discourse, we already saw how Jesus was continuing to do what he started his ministry with doing. Remember, we saw it on Friday. And Isaiah 61 is a prophecy about the Messiah coming in twofold. As a prophet, and it skips over that priesthood side of it, touches on a little bit, but goes right to his kingship office that he'll take on as judge when he comes back on Armageddon. But notice how when Jesus read from Isaiah 61, verses 1 and 2, when he read from there, as recorded in Luke chapter 4, he left out the last part when he said the day of retribution. He didn't, that's what Isaiah said, he left it out. We talked about that on Friday. Why is that important? To understand. Because as a precursor to the beginning of his ministry, Jesus was teaching you to listen and pay attention. He will speak in fragments of what he wrote before to the prophets. He told prophets to write down his word. It doesn't mean he's subjected and handcuffed to fulfill it in the exact way they wrote it down. He's like, are you kidding? I'm God, he's going to say. Jesus says, look, God Almighty can do what he wants when he wants. If you don't believe that, then you got some issues with what's going on in your head. Okay, so think about this, right? God can do what he wants when he wants. If you want evidence of that, ask Pharaoh. Ask the people on Noah's day who didn't have a choice on the ark issue. How about those in the other people that were murdered? How about Nebuchadnezzar turned into like a beast for 7 years? I mean, people have a litany of times they can go, I can testify God can do what he wants, when he wants, however he wants. If you don't believe that, there's a testimony of a plethora of people you can ask, okay? So trust me on this. When God told the prophets to write down the scripture, it doesn't mean that he is handcuffed to fulfill it in the exact way that it's written. Doesn't mean that. We call those partial fulfillments of prophecy. Not to get too off the rails a little bit, but don't forget Easter stories coming up pretty soon in our messages coming up in April. But however, don't forget when Judas betrayed Jesus, it was because not he was an evil little witch. No. Judas loved Jesus, but he wanted him to be king. He was sick and tired of the constant Roman tyranny and the pillaging of his people. He was a very volatile activist kind of guy. So he was trying to force the hand of Jesus to be in a place where he could say, I'm king, and throw down the hammer, right? And so that's why would he think that, though? Because of the same concept. Because in Zechariah, I talked about him coming on a donkey and a colt, and then right after that, it says he's going to subdue the government under his foot. And so under his hand. He's going to subdue the government. Judas is thinking, Palm Sunday just happened, it's about to happen. What did Judas make the mistake of? He didn't account for partial fulfilled prophecy. Just like Jesus began to teach, and in Luke chapter 4. Pay attention. Look what Jesus was saying. Jesus said, look, I don't care what you think. I don't care what you believe. Pay attention to what he does, not me. Jesus teaches in partial fulfillments. So if Jesus does that, does it really matter what I think? No. Does it matter what the denomination says or seminary says? No. Does it matter what the majority said? Does it really matter? Because, by the way, the majority back then was the Sanhedrin, and they got it dead wrong, didn't they? Yeah. But they also, by the way, knew he was the heir, because he told them that story, and they knew that he was the heir, about him seizing the heir. Yeah, they knew who he was, right? So the whole reality is that this is a precursor of what we're talking about in OLIVET Discourse. Jesus spoke in partial fulfillment at the beginning of his ministry. He's doing it again at the end of his ministry. And leading up until this point, Judas is already in the background acting on this behalf of thinking incorrectly, because he too, think about it, for those who do not see the prophecies of Christ being fulfilled, sometimes in full and sometimes in part, if you refuse to see that, you are just like Judas. Be careful, because you're going to betray your same Lord and God that you serve without even realizing it. And you're going to be just like him, a toy in the hand of Satan, being used to accomplish his nefarious purposes. Is that what you want? Then stop being ignorant and being presumptuous, and stop with the rhetoric of your common sense that you think is common sense, and go back to what God says, regardless of if it makes sense to you or not. Believe what the Word of God says. We're going to start with that premise. Okay, so with that being said, I think I kind of hit that horse pretty good. So I want to make sure we don't go back and belabor this too much. But when you say, well, that doesn't, right? Because we talked about before about the stones of the temple all being overthrown. And Jesus said they will all be loosed. Remember, not one stone upon a stone. He said they'll all be like this. Not one stone will be like that. Not one. Not one. Okay. All right. If you say so. Well, then I say to my amillennial friends, tap, tap, tap. Can you explain the Western Wailing Wall since you say that was fulfilled? Say how? What, Jesus, he was exaggerating, you're saying? He was just generalizing because the temple's laid level flat. We got the southwest corner of the city, the buildings of the temple. That's part of the buildings. That wasn't laid flat. So, and they go, well, it means there's a temple. No, that's not what he said. He said all these stones. All of them. So all overthrown. So therefore, it's not fulfilled. But it was partially fulfilled. We're going to look into also later on when, I'm going to get you a little heads up if we get there. Hopefully we do. But in Luke, he's the only one of the three writers that in the early parts of the Olivet Discourse mentions the frightful great signs in the heavens. Mark and Matthew do not mention that in the entry level to this Olivet Discourse. Later on they do, but not at the beginning. So at the beginning of it, Luke's the one that mentions it, which I find interesting because Josephus mentioned that what scientists would, astronomy says, well, if you take Halley's Comet and reverse engineer its every 76 years type of situation, they believe that you could therefore project it would have happened, in years back times when that would have happened. Well, they projected around the same time that coincidentally, Josephus claimed to see something like that in AD 66, 4 years before Titus destroyed the temple and the whole city, right, laid it waste. So the reality is, it's interesting, we'll get to that later, but interesting to note. But let's go back to our text now in Matthew chapter 24. And we left off with this concept of the questions being asked, and I put it on the board already to remind you. So in Matthew 24, the oi, those disciples of the 12, are mentioned from the 12 in verse 1. As remember, oi means those there. This is unique to Matthew. He's pointing this out. So there's 12 disciples being mentioned in Matthew 24:1. Of those 12, there's those who asked them the questions. So there's of the 12. So there's the specific disciples among the many, meaning there's 70 in Luke chapter 10 that he appointed. There's also others that followed him that were considered to be, wanted to be learning of him. But there's specifically 12 plus 70 uniquely different from the other. There's 12 that are unique, 70 more unique, and then the rest of them that wanted to follow. But he makes sure it's oi, those disciples, meaning the 12 that followed him every day. Then you have, again, of those 12 are the ones who asked the questions. In Matthew, it's parsed out into 3 questions. When will these things be? Again, what are these things? When he said stone upon stone overthrown. So remember on Friday, that'll be Armageddon, which is the end of tribulation period. When will that happen? Well, from the clouds, Jesus on the white horse with all the saints and the angels watching, he just goes, according to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 8, I can't wait to see that. Because I'm going to be like, can you do that again? I want to see that again. Because you're going to have the worst, heinous Antichrist, the beast, I should say, as the beast, who's done the lawless one, who he began to show his ugly face as Satan incarnate. Then he turns into the opponent who actually claims to be God and be worshipped. And Jesus just goes, and he's dead. Just like that. Not a fight, just dead. I can't wait to see that. And that's why in Scripture later on it says that they're going to be us who look at Satan and go, that's the one. That's the one that made us all get fearful. Well, yeah, we could say that at that time. Not now, we don't say that. But in the future, when Christ makes him look silly, of course, it's going to be like a laughable situation to go, he's been like tarred and feathered and de-winged, if you will, and he's going to be like, he's nothing. Well, yeah, because Christ made him look like that. That's how awesome it's going to be. So just to have that event happen, that's Armageddon. That's how it starts, with him just going, and him dropping dead. Like, that's pretty awesome. And then Gog and Magog, and he lays waste all those people in the city of Jerusalem, where there's no Jews, by the way, because the remaining Jews that are alive, 144,000 are in Petra. And then there's also people that are in Hemengog then, and these carcasses are being carried out to Hemengog for 7 months, as we saw before in the study of the millennial reign. That during that first 75 days, 2.5 months of that 7 months, he's doing Jehoshaphat, which is horrific. And then for 4 months after that, he then judges us. So during the 7 months, the Jews taking care of the carcasses in Gog and Magog, he's doing Jehoshaphat, then judging us, and then after that, the millennial reign begins. So when is the stone overthrown of the temple? At the beginning of Armageddon, when he lays waste the entire Gog and Magog people in that area and tells the Jewish people, take the carcasses out. And then when that 7 months is over, he's going to raise up a new, like his body was raised new, he's going to raise a new temple, and then walk into that one. The one you see now, that ain't nothing, Jack. Who cares? That ain't nothing. He's going to raise a new one out of the ground, out of nothing, just out of the dirt. And boom, he's going to walk into that. That's going to be awesome. That's going to be awesome. Okay, so with that being said, as we talked about already, again, they say, when will these things be? Referring to that question. Then they ask them additional questions. What will be the sign of your presences, plural, Perusias? Perusias of what? He's in the heavens and the earth. That's what we're talking about, the two Perusias of the kingdom of the heavens and the kingdom of God, of the God. And then he says it's the heaven and earthly realm of his messianic reign. Then the ends, plural, of the age. Why is it ends plural? Because there's an end of the ariston in the heavens, doesn't go on forever, and there's an end of the millennial reign, ends in the great white throne. So again, it starts with the Bema seat, ends with the great white throne. On the earth, in the heavens, it starts with an ariston and ends going into an inspection period, into the diapnon. Whereas that's what they have in view in Matthew 24. In Mark 13, now he's specific, and he mentions Peter, Andrew, John, James asked the question, what will these things be? Which all three writers have the same thing. When will these things be? They all three record that question the same. The difference is Luke's general, just saying them, not specific who asked the question. Mark's specific of who asked the question. Whereas in Matthew, you can it's veiled, but it's kind of there when he tells you it's a group among the 12 who asked the question with the language aspect of it. But in Mark, he gets into this question, and the second part of the question, they don't have three questions in Mark and Luke, just two. The second question in Mark is listed as, what will be the sign upon all these things that come together or come to a head? So go to the book of Mark, and you'll see the chapter 13, the key word that's different here that kind of transposes or takes the place of those two questions that are parsed out in Matthew is combined together in Mark. Not by my interpretation or my brain cells or my rhetoric. No, by God's word. It is put together because the word is soon telestamai. So it's a word that means soon, meaning together. Meaning, when will these things together, the Perusias and the ends of the age, when will they together come to a head? That's what's being asked in Mark. So why is it uniquely different in Mark? Because Mark doesn't see the specificity that Matthew does. He's talking to a Hebrew mindset who wants to know the fulfillment of prophecy in detail. Mark's talking to a Roman mindset, so he's more interested in how God inspired him to write in the synergy of the togetherness, because they're pretty much the same thing and timeline-wise, but they deal with different aspects, right? So Mark's asking that question as two into one. And the word there again in Mark, in chapter 13, in verse 4, when it says to be ended on the left side of your margin, Mark 13, verse 4, the word on the left is written in the AI, it's a plural, and it's a soon teleastai, and again it means these things together being completed, all things working together. When will these things come to a head? That's what he's asking about, okay? Whereas in Luke 21, let's look in Luke 21. In Luke 21, it's over in verse 7. They ask, when will these things be done? Different word. I should have wrote the word on the board here, my apology. I'm going to write it here on the bottom here so you can have it. I think I wrote it before on Sunday, but I'm on Friday, but I'm not sure if I did, but I'm going to write it out for you. Let me make sure I write this out. So it's sin, right here. SYNTELEISTHAI. And it has the word soon in there, and telestai, we said on the cross, it is fulfilled, but ongoing and plural. So he's talking about the plurality of, again, these two things here being mentioned here together. Whereas in here, it's in Luke, in chapter 21 of Luke, in verse 7. Let's go back to that. So in Luke 21, in verse 7, they asked the question differently. And Luke 21:7, again, they're not asking in specific nature of who it is asking. That is said, and they asked him, right? And so, and they asked him, when will these things be? And the sign when these things are about to be done or accomplished is the word genestai. In other words, when will these things unfold? So they're asking about the unfolding of the events. They're asking about it's written in an ongoing tense. That's the word this word is. We talked about it on Friday with Sister Pam. So it's like unfolding of the events is what they're asking about. But the point is that, again, you can see where it gets specific, less specific, but still soon together, and more veiled here, because it's somehow, when will these things unfold? It doesn't bring into view two things. It just says kind of the idea of there's things that are going to unfold. So what are these things that are going to unfold?
And
so
it's
Luke
in the
is,
plural again,
it's in the plural. Yeah, but that word is always that way in its original state. So it's not, Pam asked about that on Friday. The AI ending of this word is a verb in itself. It just means an ongoing. It's like it's saying I come and go, and I sojourn, I travel. It's just like saying the word run and running. Well, running is always in the plural because that's the way the word exists. So just the way this word is, it's always that way. So, but Luke is more general. But why? Because he's not getting involved in the specific details or the details of when things come together. He just wants the common man to know the world's coming to an end, and there's events that are going to lead to that. You might want to pay attention. That's his whole idea. It's like going into the issue of spirit, soul, and body. And by the way, there's those in Christendom. Just if you don't know this, please be aware of this. People in Christianity believe the spirit and soul is the same. What? They believe it's two sides of the same coin. Well, that's funny, because in Hebrews chapter 4, Jesus said that the Word of God divides spirit and soul in joint and body, joint and marrow or body. We're over in 1 Thessalonians 5:23, he says, may your whole spirit and soul and body be preserved blameless. So God sees them differently, but man says they're the same. I'm going to go with God. Sorry, you're wrong. So, but that's, people think that, right? So why do they think that? Because they don't see the distinctions between our three-part makeup. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, who's triune in one, made us spirit, soul, and body triune in one. He's not, come on. That's why he said, make us in his image. That's what he did. So the reality is that when you think about that, that's the thing in Luke. He's not focusing in on spirit, soul, and body, because these are common people. They don't understand Hebraic understanding. He's talking about the common man. The common man just knows that we live and we die, right? They don't know that we are spirit, soul, and body. You ask the average person, I'm telling you, they may say those two words differently, but what they don't understand, what they mean, it's called word art or cognitive dissonance. They'll basically say they believe in three parts, but they just say the spirit is the part that talks to God of the soul, and the soul that speaks to man is the soul part. What? So is it different or not? No, it's the same. No, which is why, by the way, people don't understand this, that animals have souls, for example. People go, no, they don't. Yes, they do. God said so. So they have souls. Humans have spirits and souls and bodies. Animals have a soul and a body. Great distinction to make. When people say, what's the difference? That's a big difference. So anyway, but with that being said, that's the difference of the opening act, if you will, Act 1, Scene 1, is that we saw the background of who's writing who, about what they're writing, and we talked about the questions that are being asked. Don't forget the mindset of Matthew being a person who had a position in government. He was like an Uncle Tom, tax collector, selling his people out. Mark, who saw the beginning of his ministry of seeing Christ. He saw Christ in a traumatized state, being ushered by, after being beaten and betrayed by his apostles. And he then saw a traumatic separation between Barnabas, his uncle, and Paul. He saw fractured relationships as like the earmark of his introduction to Christ. Whereas Paul saw the miraculous work of God, mental, physical, spiritual ridiculousness of keeping Paul out of harm's way or restoring Paul from harm's way. And he's like, I can't understand how this is even possible. He's a doctor. He would know what the body's capable of recovering from physically and mentally. And he's watching in amazement for 10 years as Paul's just continuously being fulfilled, sustained, renewed, refreshed. It's unbelievable. So these are their mindsets as well, okay? So from a personal standpoint. So now, let's go into Matthew 24 as we continue to read. Hope I'm not talking too fast. That was all kind of a review and introduction to this. So in Matthew 24, verse 4, he says, and Jesus replying to them. Now this is interesting because this word them, as you can see, look at the left side of your margin, is autois. Autois. So remember, when auto is written in an O-I, ois, it means not just them on the left side of your margin, but specifically them who asked the question. And we know from Mark, that's Peter, Andrew, James, and John. Oh, interesting, isn't it? Yes?
Laney said different Greek words for soul, spirit, body.
Yeah, that's right. Another indication that God doesn't stutter, right? Pneuma, or, we guys, pneuma or raka for ruach for spirit, pneuma or rock for spirit, correct. Nephesh and suke for soul, and then soma for body. So you have these different aspects of what the words mean. They're not the same. So and Matthew 24 and verse 4, Jesus replied to them. And the them there is in our toys. If you see that left side of your margin, do you have one of these? Did I give you one of these already? No? Hold on just a moment. I'm going to give you this so you can see it. So what I'm about to give you, what I'm going to give you is the Diglot is the more accurate of the scriptures. On the left-hand side, this goes to the King James and forward, carries manuscripts from the 16th century forward, which don't have the earlier manuscripts. They have more errors involved because man started to reinterpret things, reverse engineering it. And the Diglot takes from the very beginning and goes forward. So instead of having a few manuscripts of just like 70, this has 800 it draws from. Instead of 1 century, it draws from 10 centuries. So it has more accuracy. So as I'm turning in here, let me go, and I want you to, because if I'm talking about this, it's not fair to you, because you're going, what are you talking about? I don't see that at all. But if you see over here how you would read this, I'm pointing out this word right here. See atois? See where it's O-I? That's Greek, yeah.
Okay.
So to them, it's atois. That's what I'm looking at right now.
Oh, okay, thank you.
That's when I say left side of your margin. I mean, that's yours to have. You can have that.
Thanks.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thank you, I'll learn that.
So the reality is sorry, I had to give out a Diglot here, so I want to make sure that Mariah's on the same page as us. Mariah's with us today. Literally on the same page. Literally and figuratively and spiritually. So the reality is that of this word atois on the left side, when he uses that suffix of oi and ois, it has to be it's ois, atois. It's looking at the them, not just them, but a specific them. So the them of the 12 apostles, it's them that ask the question he's talking to, right? Whereas in Mark, he points out who that is. So if you go over to Mark 13, let's look at this for a moment. In Mark 13, then you'll see again when Jesus is talking to them in verse 5 of Mark 13, it's tois again. It's in brackets, mind you, because they say to omit it because they're different, it's not in all the different manuscripts, but it's in one of the manuscripts of the old. So they say to omit it, but I always include that if it's in one, this because other ones didn't have it. So they're just letting you know the brackets just means it wasn't in all the manuscripts of the old, but it's in there as well. So those that ask the question he's responding to. But in Luke, he doesn't reference that, as you can see, and Jesus is talking in verse. Let me see here, and he said in verse 8 of Luke 21. There's no mention to him saying to them. It just says he said. Okay. He didn't address them at all. Luke just says, he says. So Matthew and Mark are specific because to the toys, because they're specific to who asked the question. That makes sense to me. Doesn't it make sense to you? It makes sense to me. It's congruency of the literary work, how God makes sense, and how he would have those writers write what they wrote. Yes?
I looked at 4 people, I'm thinking 4 waves, the 4 groups that are going to have some clue of what's going on.
Yeah, that's true. There's no other waves, meaning waves of the rapture. There's 4 waves of one rapture. That's different, just different subject. Not in here but directly, but so far what you're looking at is I want you to see is that there's the them he's writing to. But here's the interesting part about what you mentioned, right? Why would he address these 4 people who are no offense to other apostles, but these 4, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, are the 4 pinnacle of the 12. So that's 1/3 of the 12, right? These 4 are the unique ones. And these 4, not all of them, listen, he's talking to all of them can hear him because they're all there. But he's charging these 4 and imputing it to the other 8 as well. Judas is here, by the way, don't forget. Judas is here hearing this. Please understand this. The Last Supper has not happened yet. Judas is here. He's hearing all of this. Think about that. Think about that. Judas is like that person who is no offense to him, but the word we say for moron or moros, it means foolish. It means a person who knows what right is and doesn't do it. And he knew what right was. He knew the scripture. He knew it. That's why he was trying to force the hand of Christ. But he was using it for his nefarious gains. He didn't mean to be nefarious, but he was trying to get an end to his end game of wanting to relieve his stress, his pressure, his desires of wanting Israel to be, triumphant in theocracy. He had all the good intentions, but the wrong way of doing it, which is a great lesson to learn. Don't get ahead of God. Don't do things your way and justify it by saying, well, God said. I don't care what God said. Did you his way? Well, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it kind of does. It kind of does. And that's why Judas made a mistake. He did the right thing the wrong way when it comes to he wanted to fulfill the prophecy. What he did about doing that was wrong. His mindset was right. His actions were wrong. He wanted to fulfill prophecy so badly, but he forgot to wait on the Lord. He forgot to let God do it his way and let his emotions and his mindset be subjected to the mindset and word and will of God. That's the lesson to be learned about Judas. Not to ostracize him and bastardize him. Stop doing that. He's your brother. Peter mourned about him in the book of Acts, crying out loud. Unsolicited, Peter brought him up to mourn the fact that he's the only one who could relate to what it's like to betray his Lord. So it's so, gosh, if Peter was alive today, he would say to all the pastors and teachers who want to continue to shame and put down Judas, he'd say, shame on you. That was my brother, and I mourned his death. What's wrong with you? He was there. He was there, and he didn't get over it, if you will. He was still saying, hey, look, he was counted with us. Let's just kind of remember who he was and the goodness of what it was. It just went south at the end, but it doesn't mean that everything about him is erased. He was this evil devil. No, Satan possessed him. He used him against his own will because his will was already predisposed to be used like that. So the lesson is, don't let your will be predisposed in an insubordinate, unsubmissive, hard-hearted, stubborn way. Stubbornness, presumption can cause you to be used by Satan if you don't realize it. So stop. That means don't be unteachable. Don't be hard-hearted. Don't harbor bitterness. Those are earmarks of your giving a door. You're cracking the door open for saying, hey, Satan and demons, go ahead, have your way with me. That is ignorant. Don't do that. I'm not saying they will, but you're leaving the door open. Don't do that. Don't do that. So here you have in Matthew 24, verse 4, Jesus replied to them, the toys, and he said, beware. Now, they may not address them, and he might address to them in Luke, but Matthew and Mark do. But the interesting part is they all say blepete. So they all say blepete, which means take heed, which means be aware. So they're all saying the same thing, which means be observant, examine, discern. So when he says lupete, does he mean, oh, I just want you to notice facts? No. I want you to know what you're seeing, why you're seeing it, understand the ramifications of what this means. Everything in your head should go beyond just a visual, physical observation. It's the same wording he used over in Thessalonians when he talked about these people being observant and alert. Later on, he's going to use that word, later on in the book of Matthew when he talks about taking care. So here he says be observant and alert. Later on, he's going to talk about being even more so like that. So I want to, sorry. Oh, I got ahead of myself here. So be observant and alert. Sorry. There you go. So blepete. That's in Mark and Luke also. He tells them to beware. But watch this now. He says, be aware, look over again in the left side of your margin. Take heed that no one deceive you, Hamas. That word for you is the term Yamas, which ends in AS. So that you is specific to them. So he's addressing the 4 apostles. But he's talking to all of them in view. So the apostles are in view, but he's actually earmarking these 4. So they ask the question, he's addressing them with the others in earshot because they're all there. So here's the reality. Go over to chapter 13 of Mark again. Let's read Mark again. Unless you see over in Mark in chapter 13 and verse 5. And Jesus began to say to them, the atois, began to say, take heed, or blepete, be aware, be alert, not that anyone you may deceive. Same word again, Hamas. That's the word for not Hamas as in the Middle Eastern bad guys. It's the word for you, it's specific you. So, and you go over to Luke in 21, again, no surprise, he's not as specific because he says, and Luke, in verse 8, he says, and he but said, look, not you many be deceived, many will come in the name of me, saying. So he doesn't get specific as to the you. Again, Luke is consistent. He's not specifying the ones who asked the question, nor is he specifying who Jesus is addressing who asked the question. That makes sense, right? If you're not going to specify who asked, you're definitely not going to specify who he's talking to. That's congruency of consistency, right? But Matthew and Mark are also consistently congruent. They're talking about who asked the question, and therefore they're specific of who he's addressing the question to, isn't he? Aren't they, right? So interesting enough, they are addressing, so that means at the beginning of Olivet Discourse, who he's talking to dominantly are not just any other ordinary human being in Christ. He is talking to those who are walking intimately with him, those he defines as faithful ones, as 100 fruit people. He is not talking just to anybody. But because he's talking to a group within a group, he's earmarking amongst mature ones, the faithful ones of those 4 amongst the other 8, so they're all considered mature ones. So you could say at the very largest stretch, only mature ones can understand the Olivet Discourse to some level or degree. So that means if you are not a person with the mystery sown to you, if you are not a person who understands salvation, inheritances, then you will not understand what's written in this book and Matthew Olivet Discourse. As a lower level mature 130 fruit, you may understand some things, but because you don't understand the basic tenets of foundational elements of distinctions and details, you're not going to see what he's saying. And you wonder why there's so many different disagreements and commentaries and denominations and seminaries and so on. Because Jesus just said, right, he's not, just imagine in class, you've all been there. I mean, I've been there. I've been there in a room. Let's all be honest with ourselves now. We've all been in a classroom setting at some point in our life where probably somebody was smarter than you, right? You're not always the smartest person in the room. If you think you are, then you're the kind of person who's either you're a savant anomaly or you're probably just arrogant. So I hope it's the first one if that's true. It might not be the last one. So the reality is all of us have been in a situation where someone knows more than us, right? Whether it's on a math issue or history or science, right? But do you ever remember that time? I remember times, whether it's in high school or college, remember those times where that person started to ask questions and you just want to be like a fly on the wall and just listen? And get the overflow of what they're talking about, because you don't understand everything, but you kind of get some gleaning overflow of some insights that you didn't have before. Well, that's kind of what's happening here. So the 4 apostles are the ones that are understanding more uniquely, and the other 8 are like, okay, he's not really talking to us directly, he's talking to us indirectly because he knows we're right here hearing him, but he's looking at you guys when he's talking, even though he knows that he's addressing us too. We're kind of overflowingly benefiting from what's being said here, which means the mature ones in total, with ideally the faithful ones, are the ones that he's intending to understand this discourse. It was never intended for everybody in Christ to go, wow, I understand. Stop lying, no you don't. That's like opening up a physics book as your first introduction to science and going, I understand, liar. That's like opening up an algebra book, your first introduction to math, and going, I understand, liar. Stop lying. There's no way you understand what that means, being in Christ. There's just no way. It's impossible. It's just impossible. There has to be some fundamentals laid down from him to convey to you. He has to have something to draw from to convey to you what the truth is, because some truth is already laid down. Do you have a question? I'm sorry. I apologize.
No,
I thought.
I was just thinking to myself, like, this is all like calculus to me.
No, yeah. No, yeah.
I'm like, well, to me, this
That's
is
okay. We're going to get there. So the reality is that it's like calculus to everybody, man. Believe, none of us knows everything. None of us, we're always learning. It's always a pursuit and never an arrival. And I'm just a sheep among sheep and a student among students. That's all I am, being given the opportunity and privilege and responsibility to teach. That's all my difference, distinction is. So when you come to what he's talking about in Matthew and in Mark, again, it's to them, and he says, let one deceive you. So let's focus a little bit on Matthew and Mark for a second. When he says deceive, the word is to mislead. To mislead, to actually cause you to wonder. Let no one cause you to wander. Now I want you to think about that for a second. But they're faithful ones. And at the very worst, mature ones. How can they be caused to wonder and be misled? I've told you this before, remember in 2 Thessalonians study and 1 Thessalonians study? Because when you already are trained in your mind to see truth within truth, you by that vicarious understanding of concept, you know that in the world around you, there's lies being told to you. Because if Christianity gets it wrong, I'm not knowing the details, how much more does the world around us get it wrong, ignoring the details? Some do it purposely, some do it ignorantly, in Christianity and outside Christianity. right? So because of our mindset trained to see truth within truth and details, you are more prone to not be fooled, but also the opposite is true. We are also more prone to be taken away by the winds of, oh, have you seen this conspiracy theory? Have you seen this interesting concept about this and that? We're more prone to think there's some truth in that because we know there's hidden lies all the time within this presentation of what they want us to believe in Christianity and the world around us. So, which also, some of that may be true, but some of it's not. And it misleads us, and it gets us off the track. And that's why I always said before that if you want to understand what's true and what's not true, what to follow, what not to follow, if it leads you back to wanting to fall in love with the Lord God himself, or going back to his word, that's good. If it leads you away from him and away from his word, oh, that's bad. Stay away from that thing or that whatever, that person or that teaching or that whatever that fanciful thing is. The sensationalism is a danger. The outside world is a danger. The outside Christianity, within Christianity, there's people that sometimes, all of us can get off the rails. All of us get off the rails. So he's telling them, don't let you, not, he's not talking to the masses of Israel. He's talking to his apostles. And by the way, think about something. Why is he saying this now? Remember the timeline. What just happened? Hosanna, Palm Sunday. He were on Monday. Tomorrow night, they don't even know it yet. Well, they do know it. It's Passover night. But they don't know it's the Last Supper they're about to have. They don't know that. They have no clue. He's the Last Supper he's going to have with them. They have no clue he's about to be delivered over and be crucified. Even though he told them, they have a clue, I should say. But they're in denial about what he meant by that. And they're about to have it come to a head. And he's over there telling them, let no one mislead you. In other words, the emotion and mental state of mind from one day to the next is going to get shell-shocked. Talk about that. Talk about traumatic. So think about something. If you're not part of the first wave, 100 fruit people and faithful ones, what he's telling you is, for the rest of the mature ones, it's going to be a shock to your system to see the Antichrist sign a peace treaty and to have the world go dark. You're going to be like, oh no, I understand. Your emotions and your mental state of mind will be freaked out. Just take it down a notch. Don't let no one deceive you. Get away from that mental and emotional reaction and respond in faith, filtering what he's telling them about to tell them. Because then he goes on to talk about in Matthew, he goes on and says, then he says, by the way, he says deceive you, not about being a this or a that, deception in general. Then he goes into specifics in Matthew. And only in Matthew does he mention that the word Messiah is being used. Whereas in Mark and Luke, they mention how no one deceive you. Doesn't say the you and them in Luke, but he does in Mark and Matthew. But in Matthew chapter 24, verse 5, he says, for many will assume my name, or the name of me, meaning saying he's God. He's not saying, the word on the left, the phrase on the left is the name of me, meaning not just saying Jesus or Yeshua, no, claiming therefore that they are God the Son, they are the Son of God. That's what he's talking about. To make it clear in the book of Matthew, he says, many will assume my name, saying, I am the Messiah, and will deceive many. And the word deceive there, and the in ending, it isn't a future tense. It means it's like a future tense that actually, it's like an earmark. So Pam asked the other day, and I did some further study on this aspect of it. What's the suffix in, kind of demarcate, what's the kind of emphasis there of this suffix ending? So I know it's in a future tense, what it does, but the more specific after I looked at it more closely and saw, I'm leaning, again, I don't know for sure yet, but I'm leaning now toward the fact that it's actually noted as an earmark, meaning like, it's like saying, there's wars and bloodshed, as in when you have a war, bloodshed follows it. It's an earmark of war. When there's a death toll, there's carnage, right? That's in dead bodies, right? So there's things that are commensurate with or conjunction with what is being said. And so when he says these people will deceive many, that means that when people are claiming to be him, it's an earmark that in the future tense, because they're doing that, it's an assumed reality that many will believe it. So what he's saying is, when he says deceiving, which is the word, and the in, leplanasasin, what he means is with the in suffix here, it's a future tense, but it also infers that it's going to be an earmark that when this happens, there'll be droves of people following. And look how he says in the first part of that, verse 5, left side of your margin of Matthew 24, verse 5. The word many is poloi. Poloi. It's in the OI, meaning not just many as in polos, but poloi, as in those there. Of those that are claiming to be the I am, there are those that are claiming to be God, and specifically God the Son, the Messiah, the Anointed One. Which is why, no offense, it's like fingers on a chalkboard. When I hear somebody say, have you heard so-and-so teach or sing? Oh, they have the anointing of God on them. Stop. We all are anointed by God when you're walking in faith. All of us. That's what it means. To be set apart, to be set aside, to be consecrated. It's just it's just a word that we use to make it sound spiritual. And it just fingers on a chalkboard. When I hear that, it's just, you're trying to use something as if it's something big, and it's not. It's just not. It's just, So it's a big deal Jesus is called the Anointed One. So when you use that word loosely, you do realize that the only reason that we have an anointing on us is because of the Anointed One who gives us the anointing of himself on us, which is an earmark of the fact that the body of Christ we're a part of, that now the Spirit of Christ is living through us. So when you're living in a fruit yield state, when you're living in the Spirit of Christ living through you, then you're living in the anointing of Christ in you, working through you. That's a person who's anointed. Anybody who's just positioned in the Holy Spirit with the fruit of the Spirit of love coming out of them is anointed by Christ. Period. How do you know that? Because he's in them, working through them in the Spirit of Christ. And the kalos good. That's what I mean by all of us who are, us, meaning not all of it in Christianity. Yes?
First of all, Laney said, will this description be all over the world or primarily Israel? Todd said, interesting, the word many.
Yeah, the word many, poloi, as meaning those, yep, as he's saying, many, he's saying that those there, of the many. So what he's talking about is, to Laney's point, he's not talking about, he's not talking about the Israel being deceived as he is about the many who are going to be the ones deceiving are the ones coming from a Jewish elk. Meaning, there are many that are going to be they're going to say, like in the book of Revelation, there are many that say they're the synagogue of the Jews, but they're of Satan. Remember, he talks about that? So trying to identify with the Jewish ilk. By the way, and I'm going to get involved in this. Let me just kind of read you some factoids, okay? I did a little research on this. This is entertaining to me. Side note, interesting factoids. The claims of deity prior to Jesus, prior to Yeshua coming in the flesh, as in from the Garden of Eden, not counting Satan, who's a dork, but not counting him, but counting all the way from the Garden of Eden, humans, not celestial beings, Garden of Eden all the way through Jesus's birth. Guess how many times there was a claim of deity? Ready? About 30 times. That's it. About 30. I mean, that's it. Just kind of soak it in for a second. 4,000 years, 30 times. You say, yeah, so? wait. So from the time of after Jesus' life, death, resurrection, then all of a sudden, the next 1,700 years after that, 20. After Jesus rose from the dead, the next 1,700 years, there were 20 times people came up and said, I'm not just saying I'm God, I'm saying I'm Jesus. I'm saying I'm Messiah. Then, 200 years after that, as in the 1800s and the 1900s, there was 30 more times there were claims of Christ. So you got 30 before Jesus was born and 50 after he was resurrected, saying he was Christ. Not counting the last 120 years. The last 120 years, guess how many there was? 72. So the last 120 years, there are 72 people who have said, I'm the Messiah. What? No, you're not. 72 times that I've counted. And by the way, that's just what's recorded. Who knows who else has been saying that wackadoodle stuff, just not notable enough to record. So there's 72 people that have said, I'm the Messiah. And by the way, did you know, that's not even counting, did you know, remember back in the book of Acts, they were thinking that Paul and Barnabas were Jupiter and Zeus, remember that? They thought they were gods of the Greek mythology. And Paul's like, no, we're not gods. No, because they were doing miraculous wonders and signs. They're like, no, We're apostles of the Most High. We're not, no. We're not gods. Put away that mythology stuff. We're not that. Did you know that Ezra, who rebuilt the temple, some Jewish people thought he was a demigod? What? Crazy time stuff, right? So it isn't like Jews and Christians alike didn't get mistaken, or I should say people in Christ and people of Judaism, of Covenant and Testament, don't get confused when they see signs and wonders. So it's amazing how people today, and my Pentecostal friends, who say, oh, you don't understand, man. I saw it, man. I saw it, man. I experienced it, man. I saw the tongues, man. I saw the person healed, man. And I go, yeah, I saw Copperfield walk through the wall, too. I saw Liberty disappear, too. It's called magic. It's called an illusion. It's called lies. Do you trust your eyes all the time? Are you serious right now? You've been to a magic show? They lie all the time. Come on. You open up your eyes, man. Come on. Well, I saw it, therefore it's real. Oh my gosh. Okay, go to Vegas. Not that I'm saying go there, but oh my goodness, watch a TV show and you will see anytime you watch this show, they tell you they're lying to you. But because your eyes see it, well, it must have happened. That must have gone through a wall. It's an illusion. I don't know how they do it. I don't know. I know it's not real. So the same way people on TV and those who get behind the pulpit and say, oh, no. It's all fake. It's all fake. By the way, this is part where I get to remind you, when Jesus healed the lame, it means he grew a limb back. I wish he would have said that in the original language, by the way. When it says he healed the cripple, it means they were like that. But when he healed the lame, it means they had no arm. And he went, and an arm grew. Now, you watch that happen? Oh, I'll believe. Show it to me. Because you can't fake that, see? You can't fake a leg growing out of a no-leg section of your body. I can fake being blind. Oh, now I see. I can fake, I'm deaf, now I hear. I can fake that. I can fake, oh, I'm crippled. Now I start walking. Fake growing a leg back. Good. You can't fake that. Fake, go to the cemetery and go, oh, and raise the dead. Try to fake that. You can't do that, right? So these are the things that Jesus did. He did things you can't fake. You can't posture. You can't do fake news. It's pretty much, they're like, yeah. Remember, that's why during this going on right now, what were the Jews doing? They were going, oh, great, there goes Lazarus. He came in on Palm Sunday. We got to take this guy out, man. He is a huge problem for us because everybody knows the brother was dead for 4 days, and now he's walking around. So, no. The more he walks around, the more it screws up our narrative that he's not the Messiah. The longer he walks around, the more it builds the narrative that he is the real guy, the real deal, because how can we explain that people keep telling people that he was dead, now he's alive? We just got to take him out. So it's in the book of John. Only John mentions it. They were collaborating to kill Lazarus during this time. Right here, this is going on. The Jews are going, oh my gosh, I can't stand this guy. They hear him teeth going, oh. Then they go, oh, there's Lazarus. That just kind of rubs salt in the wound. Like, here's another evidence of his deity. He just rose the dead. You can't fake that stuff. It's pretty awesome. He was 4 days dead. Oh, and then he's walking around. They're like, dude, yes.
Laney said Benny Hinn could never do that.
Oh, yeah, Benny Hinn. Oh. So the reality is that in verse 5 of Matthew 24, the many are those in Israel, those identifying those, I mean, he's talking about the many among the Jewish people. And by the way, who is the first of many? People, there's a paper in your book called Hebrew Christianity. I write about the factual data of Simon Bar Kokhba, who led the distinction between how it used to be, don't forget this, how Christianity used to be of covenant people, Jewish, and Testament people that were Jewish, that were part of the one new man, mixed with Gentiles, all working together, all loving and kindly together, working together, and they were just fine with each other. They weren't trying to force the Jews to convert. They were just testifying of the truth and love of Christ. Some were on the op fringes going, hey, I don't like that, but there was a lot of masses going, hey, that's awesome, They were all one happy family, like stepbrothers and brothers, but they were just, they weren't the same, but they were congruent. So when the Romans went to attack the Jews, the Christians go, well, I'm going to be here to fight with you side by side. You're my brother in arms. You're of covenant, sure, but still, I'm Jew, you're a Jew. I'm just a new man in Christ, and you're not understanding that yet, but you're still my brother. I'm going to fight for you, your freedoms. And then this guy, Simon Bar Kokhba, goes, I'm the Messiah, fight behind me. And the Christians went, oh, can't do that. That's the problem. That's the problem. We have one Messiah. He's Yeshua, not that guy. And they're like, oh, come on, we're going to get killed. I'm sorry, I can't fight under that banner. He is saying he's the Messiah. I can't do that. And that's what Jesus meant by many. Many of the Jewish people will start to claim this. You cannot align yourself with Jewish people just because you love them when they are claiming they follow a different Messiah. Or they're claiming they are the Messiah. I don't care what they tell you. I don't care what their relationship to you is. Stay away from it. He's telling you, don't do that. Love Israel doesn't mean you have to just subject yourself. Well, you told me to love them, and so therefore, even though they believe in false stuff. No. If they're doing wrong stuff, then you stay away from that. Don't let them mislead you. Don't let them misguide you, take you off the path, make you wander. Don't do that. That's what he's talking about. That's why he says, paloi, many, those of the Jewish people. The oi, those of the many or the Jewish people he's talking about. Yes?
Robin said, this will happen again in the future. Some will
Yep.
fight with those in Israel.
Yep, you'll actually read in history there's a couple of Jewish rabbis who had been deified and thought that they were the Messiah, either imputed or self-proclaimed. No joke. It's not like it's like foreign to us. It's happened after Christ rose again from the dead. This happened, even after the first century. So you have in chapter, again, 24 of Matthew, verse 5, and we see that, again, he says, they will assume in my name. And again, there's 72 times in the last 120 years this has happened, which is, again, more than the previous 1,900 years. Let's think about this. Take it in for a second. So Jesus lives, dies, rises from the dead. For 1,900 years, there's 50 times people say, I'm God, I'm the Messiah. The last 120 years, 72 times. Does it bring up the mindset that possibly we're coming to a head on some things? Because that's kind of accelerated, isn't it? I think that's accelerated difference. It's a big spike in occurrences. Yes?
Laney said, will the Pope claim this?
There are some popes who have claimed this. There are some people who have imputed it to popes in the past. However, the papal doctrine, or the Catholicism doctrine, is that they are the vicar, V-I-C-A-R, of Christ, which in Catholic doctrine means that they are the voice box of God. So they equate the Pope to what Peter and Paul were in the book of Acts, to what the apostles were during the ongoing confirmation of the Word of God, that whatever they say goes. Because they were, before the Word was written, it was spoken first about Christ's post-resurrection, right? The New Testament was first spoken before it was written. And then the Catholics believe that the vicar of Christ represents that same platitude, that he is the one who's speaking ongoingly for Christ. When Christ clearly said through the gospel of, through the book of Revelation to the Apostle John, that you're not to add any words to any of these, this the last book that was written. So obviously when he says write the word to this book, that would include all the books before it, you would think. So therefore the Pope is incorrect. So our Mormon friends, who aren't even in Testament at all, by the way, they believe that there's ongoing apostles who ongoing do the same thing. So Mormons view the same thing as Catholics do. Catholics view it through one man, a vicar. Mormons view it through apostles. Jehovah's Witnesses view it through organization, the Watchtower. They all do the same thing, which is create tons of errors with where they put their authority. The authority is on God and His Word. Not a man, not other men, and not an organization. That is completely ignorant. But they do it. My authority is, I'm talking not from me. The Word of God is all that matters. I can't say the word here is tomato, believe me. No. Don't believe me. Believe what the Word of God says. I'm just a sinful doofus. But the Word of God is true. And so here in verse 5, again, Matthew 24, left side of margin, he says, Poloi, they shall come in the name of me, saying, I am the anointed. And many polos shall be deceived. So there's those who will claim that are being of Jewish ilk, of those that claim to deceive many who are not of Jewish ilk, who are of and of not. So that whether Jew or Gentile, many will be deceived. And many will be deceived in the future tense. It'll be an earmark, is that many, Jew and Gentile alike, many will be involved. It's not just a Jewish thing or a Gentile thing, what he's saying. Doesn't matter. The many is specific to Jew or Gentile who will be deceived, but the many claiming the deception are the ones that are Jewish distinctly, because he uses poloi, the OI. That's what interesting phrasing here is. But notice how he's, again, talking about this to the four, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, with the other 8 in view. So the Olivet Discourse, again, is written to faithful ones directly, mature ones indirectly. Understand this. And he's talking about being deceived, being misled, being caused to wander. Let's go back over to Mark chapter 13. Let's go to Mark 13. In Mark 13, he says in verse 5, And Jesus began to say to them, the atois, beware, oblipete, take heed, be aware, be alert, that no one deceive, mislead, again, to cause you to wander, the ones he's talking to, those four. Many, same word again, poloi in verse 6 of Mark 13, will come in my name. See, there's no mention of Messiah here, is there? Why? Because he's writing to a Gentile Roman mindset. Matthew's writing to a Hebrew mindset, so he mentions Messiah. Don't fall for this stuff, guys. I am he, and will deceive many. But here's the question. Why would he say that to, think about something here. And why would a faithful one, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, think of the Messiah as anybody else but Yeshua? That makes no sense, right? Unless he's talking to them, but the indirect people hearing it, which are the mature ones in type, even though none of the apostles would be subjected to this, the inference and symbolic reality is that during the tribulation period, isn't the Antichrist going to do that? Yeah, he is going to do that. He's going to come on a white horse. He's going to come with a Stephanos, not a diadem. He's going to come with a bow with no arrows. He's going to look and visage in the veneer like Christ. Soft and suave, filled with love and oratory skills. And they're going, he's Jesus. No, far from it. He's not Jesus. And he's going to say he's the Messiah. And even the mature Jesus said later on in the OLIVET Discourse, even they would be deceived the longer time went on if he didn't cut it short. So he's telling them, the direct ones, he's talking to them, but this is an indirect message to those hearing going, some of you mature ones in the future, these people won't be directly affected, but the future application of it is mature ones will be affected by this challenge and tribulation period, not to fall into this idiocy. And who would the mature ones be that fall into that? More than likely the foolish ones. Some may fall into that ignorance. I would hope not. That'd be silly time, but I would think not. But he's just saying this, so it makes me think that why would you say that? Like, why would you say that if it's not even possible? You know what I mean? It's not even possible, which makes me believe that some of these foolish ones are the ones who do, in fact, try to just self-justify, which makes sense to me because they're the ones who, again, presume upon God. They don't become teachable with God. They think they have everything in a settled state. That's what the foolish virgins did. They didn't bring an extra measure of oil. So they, in their minds, they justify whatever the reality is based on how they see themselves. So they might justify to themselves, oh, it's not that bad, or whatever that may be. All I know is it's interesting he would say this to those people, as if to say, again, it's possible. And if it's possible, that's crazy. That means that in tribulation period, some mature ones, which I think are the 30 fruit people, will be deceived. I don't know for how long, but probably for some time, believing the Antichrist. They might entertain the idea, maybe he is Christ. Oh my gosh. Why would they think that, by the way? Because 30 fruit people are in denial about ways of a rapture. They don't know about it. Think about this. Remember, they don't know this. No, they do not. No, they do not. There's not one 30 fruit person I know alive who believed in ways of a rapture. Not one. Say 60 fruit and above may be privy to understanding there's distinctions, but 30 fruit doesn't. And if there are some that do, they're the minority. The majority do not. So that could be an easy way for them to think, well, if there's no such thing as a parsed out rapture and I'm still here, then a rapture hasn't happened. Therefore, this must be Christ. Maybe I got something wrong. I don't know. It makes me think, I don't know. But I think it's interesting that Jesus would talk to these people about something that's possible, which only leads to the future ramifications out ahead. But again, he says in verse 6 of Mark 13, many will come in my name saying, I am. And the right side is so bad when it says, I am he. Our Jehovah's Witness friends they love that. That's not what it says on the left side. It just says, I am. Not I am he, just I am. As in many will say that they're the I am, the great I am, as in God. And deceive many. So we look over in Luke 21. Let's go to Luke now. In Luke 21, he goes over and says in verse 8 something different. He adds something different in Luke. He adds something that Matthew and Mark do not talk about. The specific nature of Matthew adds one thing different than Mark when this context is brought up, and that is the word Messiah. Matthew brings up the specific, the anointed, the Messiah of who Jesus is, his messiahship. Mark doesn't talk about that. He talks about the I am. Matthew says the I am the Messiah. Luke just says the I am. Luke chapter 21, verse 8. And he said, see that you not be deceived. Same phrasing here, take heed, be alert, that you not be deceived. Don't be led away or but astray. But it's the same phrasing for many, talking to the Jewish. Now he is distinguishing. Many, poloi, many, again, the Jewish folks, will come in my name. You wouldn't know that by reading Luke alone, only if you read Matthew and Mark. No, say in my name, I am. This is where Luke differs. He adds this part that Matthew and Mark don't. This last part. And he says, and the time draws near, go not after them. Interesting. He says the time draws near, as in, what he's saying is, the time is drawing near, as in, it's coming to an end when this starts to happen. Which is why I wanted to emphasize to you, Luke's the only one who's talking to the common man. He wants the common man to know that, remember his question about the unfolding of the events. When's it coming to a head? As Mark would say, when all things working together. Whereas Matthew would say, when are the signs of your presences, the perusas, and the ends of the age? Well, Luke is talking about the events that unfold that lead to that. Luke's the first hint that tells us that's your Mia situation right there. Because later on, Matthew's going to talk about the protos sign, because the Mia sign is this deception issue of people saying, I'm God. And he said it's the sign of the end. By the way, when he says don't, and Luke, and he says don't follow after them, don't go after them, it means don't follow. Don't get caught up in and even listening to them. Don't do it. So therefore, it goes back to what I said before. He's talking about, again, being discerning, being alert and aware up in your mind, in your spirit. Have your spirit be always alert and aware. There are people out there that want to deceive and take you off the track. Okay? So he's talking about, again, verse 8 of Luke 21 gives us a time frame that's the Mia, or the number one thing that happens as the beginning of these things beginning to be fulfilled, when you start to see a ramping up of these things. And I just talked about, I didn't write the book, I also didn't write history, but again, when there's 50 times from the time of Christ resurrecting to the time of 1900s, 50 times people said, I'm God, then there's 72 times, last 120 years compared to the last 1900 years. I think things are ramping up. I think time is getting near. I think that's the Mia thing is already being fulfilled. It looks like to me. I don't, just saying. It looks that way to me. It looks like Luke 21:8 is pretty much on par. The time is near. That's what he's saying. It's real close. Yes?
Pam said he speaks of the season, Luke.
Yes, that's correct.
It seems like I've heard that OHM, like home or something, is sort of like this sound like of an I am.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing. When you say the word season, look on the left side of your margin. When the word season is there, it's the word kairos. Kairos. So season is a bad translation for that word. So the season is the actual Simeon, which is the word for kairos, which means for time. We get our word chronograph or chronos, time, from this word kairos in the Greek. So it means time. So he means, to your point, he's talking about a season in our verbiage, but he's meaning that's the beginning of the time when the beginning begins of what he's about to tell you in verse 8 of Matthew 24. The beginning of sorrow starts with that. And guess what? I believe that time already started. Based on how last 120 years, that time started already. That time starting as of now. I think we're in that time right now. The beginning of the beginning has started, if that makes sense what I'm saying. The first thing of the beginnings of sorrows, put it that way. The first thing of the beginning of sorrows has already started. That's what he's saying. Yes?
First of all, Pam said, right, time is chronos. Todd said, what's the difference between season and time? And Pam said, I agree.
Yep. Season is Simeon is a broader scale. And then, for example, I use the analogy all the time when I say, okay, for example, you guys are up north, we're down here in Florida, which, by the way, Florida spring is noted by hot with a wind breeze. That's spring in Florida. It's just so you guys, and you guys up there, you guys know when there's no more snow. You guys have tons of snow. So I keep seeing it, and you guys show me pictures and stuff. It's unbelievable. And plus, I see the news. So the reality is that you know at some point, you don't know when, but spring's coming, right? That's the season. That's the next one. It's on the calendar last time you checked, right? It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. You don't know when, but you know kind of when it's going to happen. Sometime March, April, sometime in there, it's going to be springtime will be in full bloom, right? Flowers start to bloom, right? All that stuff. You know that. But that's the season. But the time means you actually give me the exact day. Can you give me a day? Can you? No, you can't. You can't say March 5th. Nice try. You can't say March 12th. You don't know that. You don't know. That's the time. The time is specific. Season is general. Then the moment, then the hour is saying the season, spring. The time, March 10th. The hour, at 11 o'clock a.m., you're going to start to see all the snow start to melt. Okay, yeah, right, sure, okay. And then at the very moment, you're going to see the flowers bloom in 3, 2, 1 at 12:03 and 2 seconds. That's the moment. That's what the words mean in Greek. There's the moment, there's the hour, there's the time, there's the season. They go from general to more specific. He's using the second most general term. So season is the most general term, and then time is the second most general term, meaning a time frame. But there's no pinpointed, he's saying like the 10th is a time, but any time within that 10th, I don't know, midnight, noon, 2, 4, I don't know. It's a time, okay? So the moment is the time is the actual time within that time. And then the hour, and then the hour, and then the moment. Yes?
Okay, first of all, Kelly Bagley said, praise God for spring. And Robin said, in the KJV, all three Gospels say, I am Christ.
Yeah, I know, and that's why we don't use the KJV as our proof text. And I know what you're saying, though, believe me. KJV, hey, God loves them. That's all I can say. So with that being said, back to Matthew again, because that's why we use the diaglot for the accuracy of the details, and it really brings out. You can see how. I hope you're seeing how that the KJV is, no offense to it, it's generalizing, right, and just imputing a generalization. In the synoptic mindset, it's thinking it's doing nothing wrong by doing so, and I disagree. It's doing a great disservice. Keep the words for what they're written, by who wrote it, and how God inspired them to write it, period. You're always better doing that. That's to be agreed. Yes?
Okay, Pam said, you're saying Simeon is a season. I have that to be the word for sign.
Oh, maybe I'm saying, sorry. I'm using the word, sorry, tell you what. I said the word Simeon, that's for sign. Thank you. Sorry about that. The word season, I'm sorry, thank you. I spoke out of turn. What's the word for season right now? It's in your, come on, Preston, think. If I can go to scripture, I can see it.
Pam said, Kairos is season and Chronos is time. Lainey said,
Oh!
S-E-Z-A-N, and Vicky, Kairos, K-A-R-I-O-U-S.
Am I getting it? Sorry, am I?
Her blue letter Bible.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I misremembered. My apology. I'm saying the definition's correct. I'm remembering the wrong word. My apology. So say it again. So Kairos is season and Chronos is time. I know that, but for some reason I'm thinking that Kairos, we got Chronos from that. Is that? That's not ringing a bell for me for some reason. I'm drawing a blank on something here in my mind. I'm just being honest with you. I'm misremembering for a second here.
Vicky said K-A-R-I-R-O-S. She said, I cannot type.
That's okay. So that's the word for season, though, in the actual Greek, Kairos. For some reason in my head, I'm associating Chronos comes from Kairos.
Pam said, yep. Vicky said yes, and Lainey said that's right.
Okay, so Kairos is the Greek word for season, correct? What you're saying?
That's what they said.
Okay,
yes.
got it. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's on me then. That's me misremembering things. My apology. I said Simeon. I'm thinking of sign. Sorry, because I'm thinking ahead because that's coming up later about a sign. I apologize. Oh, it actually came up before when he said this sign. I'm thinking of the previous. Sorry, that's on me. Made a mistake. See, there you go. Thank you very much. Thank you. So I'm thinking for some reason Chronos came from Kairos. Kairos is season. Chronos is time. Thank you for correcting me. Thank you. Sorry about that. Whew, boy, I feel bad. All right. So in Matthew 24, verse 6, and he said, "You will soon hear of conflicts and reports of battles." And he says again, "You will soon hear about conflicts and reports of battles." The word reports is in the plural. It means rumors. Reports, obviously, it just means you're hearing information about it. Yes?
Vicky said, so the warning here, time is near, is referring
To the season. It goes back to what Todd was
wave.
saying earlier. Yep. So basically, to correct I was saying the right things. I was using the wrong wording for Kairos. Should have been for season instead of Simeon. For some reason, I misspoke. The understanding was correct. My word association was wrong. Sorry about that. So the word there is season in Luke 21, which is referencing a season, more general time. So sorry about that. That's on me for, I don't know, just misassociating in my head. All right.
And Pam said, good question, Vicky, and Vicky said, but Mia wave.
Yeah, that's still that's the Mia occurrence is the false Messiah. The deception is the Mia thing that happens as the number one thing for the beginning of sorrows. And now the number two thing is about to tell you, which you know because of what he says here, and he says here that and there shall be soon here of conflicts and of reports of battles. He says that reports of battles, and then again rumors and reports of wars. Again, that means, again, he's talking about, again, what you think the word means, conflict, strife, wars, and rumors of these things. And he's talking about here, and he says, and take care. This word take care is the word for harote. And that word is the one I got ahead of myself earlier too. It's the word to perceive, discern. I got to confess my apology. The thoughts are blurring together in my mind a little bit on that word Simeon, as well as it did here earlier. I did it earlier with Lupite too. I started to put discern and to examine, but that's for the other word coming up. I'm just getting ahead of myself. So again, I apologize. So the harote, when he says, when you see left side of your margin or take care on the right side, is translated from the word see, which is harote on the left side. So when he says, and you will soon hear of conflicts and reports of battles, but take care, Matthew 24, verse 6, that phrasing take care comes from the left side of the word see, which is the word harote, which means to perceive and discern. So perceive and discern, do not be disturbed. That means to be throasete, which means to be unsettled or confused. These things must occur first. And he says these things must take place, but the yet is not. But yet it is not the end. Okay, the word, it behooves, left side of your margin, and it says must occur on the right side of your margin, is the word DEI, and it means it's necessary. So it's necessary for these things to take place, and the words in that genomai sense, so it continues to happen, unfold. But it's not the end. It's the beginnings of the end. Then he goes on to talk about in verse 7, I'm going to go back to Matthew in just a minute and Luke, but just in verse 7, for a nation will rise up, that is the word egiro and thestimi put together. So thestimi means to stand, and egiro means to raise. That means to raise up, you're standing up against each other. That means as if to posture, to fight. You're not going to take this battle lying down. So they're going to be, again, it's interesting, he says for nation rise up against nation. But we know the word nation is a bogus translation. Interesting enough, the word means ethnos, which means ethnicities. Oh, that's interesting. I think we're living in that world right now in our country, aren't we? Blacks hating whites, whites hating blacks, Hispanics, everybody's in divisiveness with each other. All these ethnicities are at war with each other. I mean, that's interesting, isn't it? Don't you think that's interesting? I think it's just, it says where ethnos rise up against ethno, not nation, not Germany and France, and no, ethnicities. Black, white, brown, forgot to write it down, everybody. So, and God's like, it's so silly to judge somebody and think of them differently because of the color of their skin is just ignorant. But here he says, for ethnicity, rise up against ethnicity. And then he says, and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be, in various places, famines and earthquakes. Okay? So he mentions famines in the left side of your margin in Matthew 24, verse 7. The word plagues is in brackets. So again, that's because they don't have it in all the translations, but I would say it's there as well. So famines and plagues, which is the word for calamities or pestilences. Yes?
Pam said, boy, is that going on now. Let's discuss the word kingdom.
Yeah. So the word kingdom here, to your point.
She said there are two different endings.
Yep, correct. Because the word kingdom The other word for kingdom has the phrasing about kingdoms that's in a future tense. So the one word kingdom is kingdoms that are existing against future kingdoms that'll not even come about yet, which is happening, right? It is happening. Yes.
And Pam said, is the first one a plural?
No. It's basilia and the basilion. So these two words, one is they're both singular, but one's in a present tense and one's in a future tense. The ending of the suffix just represents it's in a future tense. So it means kingdom will rise up against future kingdoms. So there'll be one kingdom rising against other future kingdoms in ongoing sense. So in other words, it doesn't matter whether they're two present day kingdoms or one's present, rising against future kingdoms. Which we see that, by the way, we see that with us, we see that with Russia, we see that with China, right? We do see that. There's kingdoms, if you will, or countries or empires, or call it what you'd like, superpowers, that rise up against others that crop up, right? Kingdoms, plural, as they say. But it says it in the plural, but it actually, does it say it in the plural? No, it says it's singular, excuse me. I thought the right side said it in plural, but it shouldn't. It's singular, but it means the kingdom in the future. So a kingdom in the present rises up against the kingdom in the future tense, which means, again, those that aren't even in existence yet will have a strife within them as well with another kingdom on the outside. That's what he's talking about. Yes?
And Pam said, are these spiritual kingdoms or physical?
Yeah, so Jesus said, my kingdom's not of this world, of course, as we know, but there's always a spiritual ramification and symbolism here. So it's speaking of both what you're talking about. It's speaking of the physical countries and powers that we have rising up against their current adversaries and future adversaries. But it's also representing what you just mentioned, is that within Christianity, there are people within the body of Christ. We talked about it on Friday. There's a soma, body of Christ, and there's a joint sosoma, joint body of Christ. Referenced in Ephesians chapter 3, is it 3:6 and 4:16? So we know that the soma and susoma exist, and so we know within the body of Christ there's divisions, there's distinctions that turn into divisions when there's unsettledness and conflicts, which we see that already. We see again, people that are saying that some liberal viewpoints of all kinds of things that are wackadoodle, not in the Bible, that are being okayed and sanctioned by Lutherans, Methodists, Catholics, Presbyterians. It's wrong. It's wrong to say that, oh, gays can be a pastor. No, they cannot. Don't hate them. You just can't say you can be a pastor. You say, oh, women can do all these things. No, they can do everything but be a pastor. There's rules. I didn't write the rules, but you don't look down on people either because of the rules. You just obey them. But people don't do that nowadays, right? And so we're rising up against each other. There's people right now that are saying Joe Biden has a biblical right to abort babies. They're saying it's in the Bible. Where's that in the Bible? There's Catholic nuns and priests and Methodists and Presbyterians saying that that is a biblical position. No, it's not. No, it's not. Not ever, is it? No, it's not. He's the way, the truth, and the life, so you should be pro-life, because that means you're pro-Jesus. So I don't understand why you're mad at me when I say I'm pro-life. I'm pro-Jesus. Yeah, that's his name, the life. So he represents the life in the womb. So, yeah.
I have a question.
Sorry.
I'm still kind of confused about the kingdom against future kingdoms thing.
Yeah.
Like, if it's a future kingdom that doesn't exist, are we talking, and that doesn't be the dumbest thing that.
No, go ahead.
But are we talking like the possibility of like alternate realities or future things, or because if basically, okay, I'm not naming because it like goes into like science and stuff, so it just, I'm a little confused here, so can you just help me?
It's okay, that's okay.
I'm really confused at that.
So when he says kingdoms,
It doesn't exist.
when he says kingdoms rise up against future kingdoms, he means an existence right now of an empire or a government that's going to rise up against a government that's in existence or ones that will be in existence. In other words, like prophetically, like for example, even in history, Al Qaeda didn't exist forever. It came into existence, and that was in its own sense its own little kingdom of hateful terrorism. And so now it's called whatever it is now. What is it? I don't know what it is. I can't even keep track anymore. But the reality is it keeps on. Evil and terror shows its face ugly different ways. Look at Russia. It used to be called the USSR, and now it's called Russia. You know, it used to be East and West Germany. Now it's one Germany. So countries change, and governmental powers change. Guerrilla warfare changes. Who's in power? And so a lot of that is referencing the kingdoms represents actually a controlling government of rulership over a people. So it doesn't mean you have to have a country per se. It's a realm of a region of control and of dominance. So as long as you have a leader and you have a control, and you have a regality type of clergy, laity type of mindset, that's a kingdom. So as long as you have a king, if you will, and you have followers, and you have, that type of landmass that you're overseeing, then yeah. And some people, in this case, we're in a world where terrorism is kind of not like, they kind of have oversee their own little, they're like, what do you call it, mobile land. They don't have like land mass per se. They like to take over land masses of Britain and America and Middle East and Africa and all this kind of stuff. Okay, but that's a different type of a kingdom. That's not your normal kingdom, which is what I believe he's talking about, is that any future kingdom that will come into pass, whether it's on the traditional mindset or the future reality of where there's a king involved, a leader, and those who follow. And they have a government that they go by, which is true. There's a government they go by, rules, and there's a one they follow, and there's many followers. That's a kingdom. And they have a rulership of things. Yes, sorry. Hope that makes sense what I'm saying. Does that make sense? Help you?
I'm working on it.
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, first of all, Pam said, because Christians are the target now. Robin said Satan kingdom. Laney said have been a target since Eve in type.
Yep.
Pam said China communism is a huge kingdom.
Yeah, no doubt.
Ngdome. Vicky said, so we are speaking of Satan's kingdom in a second half of tribulation.
We're speaking, yes, his kingdom will come to pass. He's one of those kingdoms that'll come to pass. But he's not talking about him here. No. His kingdom will come to pass, correct. But remember, that's not in view here. The tribulation is not in view because he's talking about events that lead up to it. So he's not talking about tribulation. No. Good question. He's not talking about tribulation because verse 8 says it's the beginning of sorrows. He's talking about what leads up to what are the steps that lead up to the encompassing phrasing, the beginning of sorrows. The beginning of sorrows starts with false messiahs wanting to deceive you, the mature ones. Then he goes into wars and rumors of wars and conflicts and famines, and then kingdom rising up against kingdom, ethnicities fighting. That all is precursor to tribulation. That's precursor to the rapture. All that happens before, which is right now. Right? Who he's talking about? That's happening right now. It's going to be the things that are the dominoes falling plural. Many dominoes will be falling before that happens. So it's the beginning of sorrows. Yes.
And then Vicky said, but this is prophetic, and then she said, okay. Pam said, these are the Mia events.
These are the Mia, correct. Now watch, let me show you. So watch, to get some idea here. So when you go into the book of Mark, he says, and when you, verse 7 of Mark 13, and when you shall hear conflicts and reports of battles, but not be alarmed. Again, the same phrasing. Don't be, again, the word is disturbed. The same phrasing is used. Don't be unsettled. Don't be confused by the battles. Don't. It is prophetically. He's talking about a prophetic event that's going to happen, and he's talking about the things that lead up to it. And based on the time that they were in, which is AD 33, 34, we're looking at the time frame being future, about events that are going to be happening that lead up to the final, the end, the Perusias, remember? And the things, they're asking about future things. They're all different questions. So the reality is that he said, he's answering the first question. When will these things be? Well, the things, the overthrow of the stone of the temple won't happen until tribulation begins. It's not even in view. It has to begin first before it comes to an end. He's just giving them a preface of what's going to lead up to the start of tribulation, then the end of tribulation, and then that's when these things will be about the stones being overthrown. But Jesus, in his typical character trait, as us humans hate it when people talk like this, is a very long-winded teacher. So sometimes people tell me, I'm too long-winded. Hey man, I'm just taking after the master. So I'm just saying, he's very long-winded when it comes to, not in a bad way, I'm not saying that. We would call that long-winded. He talks a lot. And by the way, you just tell you what, you read Matthew 24 and 25, and just think about something here for a second. When you read that, imagine yourself sitting on the mountainside after Palm Sunday, and you're the day later removed, and you're hearing this. Are you going to be able to stay awake? Seriously? Your excitement level is so high, and now he wants to stop, and he wants to talk to you? How about just taking over the Roman government? I'd be like, it's time for action, man. I wouldn't be wanting to listen. No, I'm being honest with myself. I wouldn't want to listen to him at this point. I'm like, you just came in to Hosanna, and we all clamored for you, and we all are in agreement that you're the guy. Can we just get on with the show here? And enough of the talk. We're done with the talk. You've been talking to us for 3 years. You're talking to us. Can we just get on with the action now? Can you just really just kick their butts? Could you please take over this place? That's what I'd be thinking. But that's not what's happening, right? So I'm being honest with you that if it was me, I'd be antsy going, come on, finish up. When are you going to throw down the gauntlet, man? Passover's tomorrow night. Is that when you're going to do it? Because my mind's drifting. If it's me, I'm drifting. I'm going back to what just happened. I'm thinking, like, what's he talking about? Can we just get to the final end of this, please? Because remember, they do not see a crucifixion at this time. They don't see it. Don't forget that. They don't see this. So what they're talking, he's talking about what's about to happen, like right now. He's like, I'm going to rise up against that kingdom in Rome and kick their butt. He's like, yeah. I mean, that's what I'd be thinking. Like, well, then let's get to getting. Let's go. Let's do this. They're missing some of the things he's saying totally over their head. Totally. Very normal. Very normal. And by the way, it wasn't until afterwards when the Holy Spirit empowered them that they go, oh, that's what you meant. They didn't understand what he meant when he was saying this. No, they did not. None of them did. None of them. The apostles were like, oh, yeah, I understand. No, they didn't. They didn't understand jack. They understood later on when he rose from the dead. And by the way, if you think that he understood this, you're gonna believe that's true when just a few days from now, Monday, this is Monday, and then Tuesday, then Wednesday is crucified, and all of a sudden, women come back on Sunday morning and say he's risen from the dead, and they go, yeah, you're drunk and you're crazy. They don't believe that when he told them directly, I will go to Jerusalem, they will kill me, and I will raise up in 3 days. He told them that just a week before. Straight language. And here he's talking in parables and in future prophetic ways, and not parables yet, but he's going to, and in future prophetic, how are they going to understand this? They don't understand straight language, which tells you their mindset's not on it, man. I'm telling you, they're not focused on that. They're thinking, get on with the show. Let's go. Let's get these Romans out. Let's get them out of here. Let's take over what you said all along. You wanted to rule and reign through us. Let's do this. Let's set up let's go back to the glory days of King David. You come on, son of David, let's do this. And he's like, no, not really. Let me talk some more. Talk, come on. They're like, they want action. And that's why Judas goes, I'll take care of this. I'm going to force the action. Well, no. But I'm just letting you know, they didn't understand this. They just didn't. They just didn't get it. And not to mention, many people in Christendom today don't get it for same reasons. They want to jump ahead and get past all the rhetoric and just give me the action. Give me the sensationalism. You got to, come on, man. You got to read this stuff. Yeah.
They couldn't see it all in one man. Some were thinking Messiah been Joseph, and some thinking Messiah been David.
Yeah, that's right. They were just, she was thinking, they're thinking about false Messiah. You're talking about false Messiah?
Well, no, they thought that somehow that there would be two different Messiahs. There would be a suffering Messiah.
Oh, you mean that part? Yeah, they were thinking it'd be a suffering Messiah and then the non-suffering. They didn't understand. They didn't understand the different rules. So when you go into Mark 13, he said again, well, ethnos will rise up against ethnos, verse 8 of Mark 13, kingdom against kingdom, and there'll be earthquakes, with the word simioi, which is for the word for seismograph, and in places there shall be famines, lamoi, and commotions, which later on is mentioned in Luke as well, and in beginning, in verse, and he says these are the beginnings of sorrows. So we go over to Luke 21. So we're going to go to Luke 21 and catch up here and go back to Matthew. So in Luke 21, he says, and when he adds things. So in Luke 21 verse 9, he says, and you will hear of battles, which is the same word for wars or conflicts or strifes. But he also says, and insurrections. That's not mentioned in Matthew or Mark. This word insurrections is the word that means to have like some instability, some constant, basically kingdoms or governments that are constantly unstable. That's funny. We do hear about that, don't we?
Yeah, the Insurrection Act was trying
Yeah, well, yeah. Our government's being questioned about that. China's being questioned about that. Russia at one point's being questioned about that. Korea questioned about that. Is Jin Kum-hoon dead or alive? All this kind of stuff. I mean, there's always been. We hear more than ever before these kind of things, right? So then he goes on, he says, be not alarmed. Same thing again. Don't be confused. Don't be unsettled by it, though, he says. Don't be unsettled by it. He says, these things, here you go, must occur. Just how you know they're the Mia things that Pam said earlier. So in verse 9, like I was talking about, these things must first, that's the protos, must occur, but the end comes not immediately. You see that? And then he said to them, ethnos will rise up against ethnos and kingdom against kingdom. So he talks about those being the first, that these things must have come first. And verse 10, I dare say, is actually elaborating because, again, Luke doesn't have it in the same exact way. He's generalizing, remember, to a common man. So he made the statement in verse 9, then he added on in verse 10 another continual thought that leads into his additional thought in verse 11 that does not get included at all in Matthew and Mark, which is, he says in various places there'll be great earthquake. He doesn't say great over in Matthew or Mark. He says great earthquakes and great famines and great pestilences. It attaches itself to all of those things being great. All those things are great because the word great is megaloi, and the oi at the end is also is a suffix that's attached to all of those things, which means that there'll be great famines. So Luke's elaborating a lot better on not just any earthquake, but great earthquakes, great famines, great pestilences. And on your chart we have, before I told you about the prophecy timeline chart, there are things in there I talked about on the floods and famines and earthquakes and pestilences that have been tremendously increased since the 1900s. And he says there'll also be great, fearful and great signs from the heavens. Now that's another different thing. I want to get to that in just a minute. But remember, before that, back in Matthew and Mark, he said in verse 8, yet these are only a beginning of sorrows. And the word for sorrows there is birth pains. It's the word odinon. And the word birth pains is in plural. So I looked it up. I'm not a female, if you haven't noticed. So I figured out, yeah. So some folks have gender identity issues. Yeah, right. I have no problem. There's only two, male, female. That's it. That is science. So the issue of yet there are only the beginning of sorrows. The word beginning is again arche, or the origin of sorrows. These are the origin of sorrows, the things he just mentioned in Matthew and in Mark, which is why I believe in Luke, verse 10 was a little bit of elaboration on what he said in verse 9, that these things must come protos.